It's great to have you with us.
Great. It's great to be here, John. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
yeah, great to see you again. It really is. Josie, what first sparked your interest in the intersection of law, energy, and public safety? What really triggered that?
Yeah, so it's a great question, John. I'd say I am a little bit of a policy kind of regulatory nerd. I would put it to you that way. But I've always been interested in questions of public policy. And certainly to me, electricity and energy is such a huge public policy important area. And certainly now we need to really think about clean, affordable, reliable, safe electricity. And especially as we're talking about things like nation building projects, these are really, really important public policy questions. So, always been very, very interested in that area.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That's a great answer. How does your legal background shape your leadership style as the CEO of ESA?
Yeah, I would say as a lawyer, you're basically trained to think strategically, to spot issues, to consider risk. And I would say primarily as a CEO, that's really what I'm doing. I am thinking strategically. I am trying to think 3, 5, 10 steps ahead to see what are the risks, spot the issues, ensure that we can mitigate those issues. I think a legal background is a very good training ground, frankly, for that. I think another piece of it is you're always looking for solid evidence upon which to build a case. And I would say similarly, I'm driven by data and facts. And my team will tell you, I will often say to them, facts persuade. And that is very important as a CEO and as you're making some really critical decisions that you have a very solid factual basis for making those decisions. And finally, I'll say governance is very, very important also in any company and ensuring you have the right policies and procedures in place so that when you're making important decisions, you ensure that you're following the governance framework that helps you to make those decisions in a way that in future, and should anyone think to ask about those decisions or question those decisions, you'll be able to rely on a solid governance framework.
Absolutely. I had heard that you're a big advocate of data-driven strategies, right? I had heard that. And how has that mindset transformed ESA's impact? Is there like an example you could give us there, Josie?
Sure, sure. One of the big examples is our risk-based oversight. So we basically utilize an algorithm in order to allow us to determine high risk versus low risk installations to ensure that we are using our resources most efficiently and that for public safety reasons, we are inspecting those high risk installations more frequently than a lower risk installation. So data driven decision making has really, really informed our risk based approach. I would say another area is in our safety campaigns. So we take great care to think about where fatalities are occurring, where critical injuries are occurring, and looking at what demographics are most impacted. And I can tell you it tends to be young men. So it's primarily men in the 18 39-ish age bracket. And so we target our safety campaigns to those demographics. And I'll give a shout out right here to some of our safety campaigns, power line safety, particularly also electric vehicle safety. We have won multiple awards for those campaigns, and it's because they're data driven. So we're targeting the communities most impacted.
That's a great example. Great example. Thank you for that. What's the biggest challenge you experienced, Josie, moving from regulatory roles to the CEO position? Has there been a big challenge that kind of comes to your mind?
Right. I would say it's not even just going from a regulatory role. I've had legal roles, regulatory roles, different operational executive roles. I'd say the single biggest challenge for me has been moving from a group of peers where you're relying on your team of peers to suddenly being in almost a bit of a lonely position where you're the ultimate accountability for the organization and you're kind of operating a bit on your own there. You obviously have your team, which you rely on, and which is great, but you're less the doer and more the director. And so there, I think it's important to have, first of all, a great team around you. I think it's important to know how to delegate and to ensure people stick to their roles and take accountability. And I think it's important to have a fantastic relationship with your board and your board chair, which I'm very, very grateful that I do have that.
Thank you for that. And let's talk about your team a little bit more. Just a question on your team. How do you keep your team bold and innovative, to use two powerful words, in a traditionally risk-averse field like safety regulation?
Yeah, I would say it's not to be innovative doesn't mean you're taking all kinds of crazy risks, right? It really means that you're listening to your stakeholders. You're thinking about the needs of the public and the regulated communities which we serve, and you think about how to improve outcomes. And we have a very bold goal, which is to ensure an Ontario where you can live, work, and play free from electrical harm now and into the future. That's part of our new strategic plan, the into the future. So we have to anticipate where we're seeing technology move as an example. So things like energy storage systems, the electrification of the transportation sector, new manufacturing that's occurring, new types of generation, distributed energy resources, all of these things. And to be innovative means you're anticipating that. So you're making changes to the code where it's required, or you're putting out new bulletins where they're required, and you're working in collaboration with those regulated communities and with our safety partners. So it's really about fostering all of that in order to get to the goal that the company has. And it's ensuring that your staff, all of the employees, feel psychological safety. So where they see something and they think this isn't working very well, or we really should evolve this or change this, they feel very open to make those suggestions, right? They don't feel like there'll be a reprisal or there'll be some blowback for that. They feel they can contribute and that we are in a constantly learning, constantly evolving environment. Why? Because we want to get to our safety goals. So it's enhancing collaboration.
Yeah, and which is an important part of your culture, right? And so, what role does culture play in how ESA really delivers that public mission?
Culture is fundamental. I would say it's foundational. And I think, John, I've heard you quote Peter Drucker before about culture eats strategy for breakfast. I have said at town halls to our employees, without the culture and without all of them, the strategy is just words on a page. The culture is what gives the strategy life. And so we have a number of cultural attributes that we talk a lot about, and their safety, it's accountability, it's being inclusive, people focused, it's being courageous and having integrity and being adaptive. And what we've done is we've embedded those cultural attributes into all of our programs through our people and culture group. So they're part of our hiring, they're a part of our performance, they're a part of what you do when you're doing your goals, you're setting your goals each year, they're part of onboarding. And we also do something that's called wins and shout outs. So at the beginning of each meeting, we will do wins and shout outs. Leaders will do them for other departments, and to say, wow, IT, as an example, is really showing accountability by getting back to us right away on a particular IT enhancement we needed. Or people in culture showed a lot of people focus by making sure that new hire got onboarded within the day. So we use it all the time as our vernacular. And we do something else called real talk, which means that you're giving honest feedback, but you're doing it in a very constructive way, which is for the benefit of ESA. So you're giving some honest feedback, and we look at that as a real gift and as a way to improve consistently and evolve the company consistently. And that is all just part of building trust that I mentioned earlier and creating psychological safety. We use employee surveys, we use pulse surveys, and we've now just started a culture energizer team to help advise the senior leaders about how we can ensure that this culture is embedded at all levels of the organization. Because as I said, without it, when we talk about innovation in the strategic plan, or we talk about partnership or working in collaboration, it's just words on a page unless you really understand these cultural values and you live them all the time.
Bring it alive, right?
Bring
Bring it
it
alive.
alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Josie, last question, and then we'll wrap up. And if you could give one piece of advice to somebody entering the energy sector today, what would that piece of advice be? Can you boil it down to one piece of advice?
Right.
Not easy.
Yeah, it's not so easy, but I would say, establish a really good peer support network or a personal support network. So there's so much to learn, there's so much to think about. And I've heard other senior leaders in this sector talk about it being all hands on deck. I think it's going to take all of us, I would say generators, transmitters, distributors, everyone, regulators like ourselves here at ESA, a safety regulator, everyone, in order to do what we need to do to ensure that the electricity transformation that we're going through is successful. So establish those networks, reach out to your peers, keep an attitude of continuous learning and curiosity, so you're open to new ways of doing things and you're willing to evolve with the sector because the technology is evolving so rapidly.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all your answers to those questions, Josie. I know you're extremely busy. Thank you for being on the CO Global Network podcast. It means a lot to us, so we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure, John. Thanks for having me.